Welcome, everyone. My name is Jennifer Cook. I'm the Small Acreage Management Coordinator for the Front Range in beautiful Colorado. This webinar presentation is made possible by Colorado State University Extension and the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. And I'd like to thank also the sponsor for today, T-Layer. Sitting next to me is Gina Gonzalez. Gina is a firefighter with Loveland Fire Rescue. She's a former veterinary technician of 20 years, and she holds a degree in animal science with the Colorado State University. So she comes very prepared and experienced to be our presenter today. Before I hand the mic over to her, I'd like to just go over a few basic things before we get started. So first off, if you haven't already, there's a link to a PDF file which Gina will be referring to in her presentation. So you can go ahead and download that, so you'll have that available for you to look at during the presentation. And that link is right in the middle of your screen. If you're new to webinars, on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen is your chat box. So you can hear me, but I can't hear you. So this is a way for us to communicate with each other. If you have a question or comment or IT problems, go ahead and click with your mouse and type in your comment and hit enter, and we'll be able to correspond with you in that way. Behind the scenes is Darren Goodman with us. He's our IT guru. Thanks, Darren, for making all this possible. Let's see. The webinar today is being recorded, so you'll be able to look back and review what Gina talks about and look at some of the links that she has listed in her presentation. Finally, before we get started, I'd like to ask Darren to bring up the poll. So we like to just measure our impact of these webinars for you as a participant. So we have a few questions before the presentation and then a few questions after the presentation. So first, go ahead and grab your mice, and answer these questions. So please rate your knowledge of animal or livestock emergency preparation before the presentation. And then secondly, do you currently have an emergency plan for your animals? So go ahead and answer that. I know some of you are listening with a group of people on one computer, so maybe just pick an average answer and go ahead and answer for the group. So we'll take a few more seconds here to let you all answer. And it looks like most of us have answered. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand the mic over to Gina. The format for the webinar today, or the presentation for today, is Gina will talk for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes for question and answer. So please hold your questions for Gina until the end of the presentation, and we'll have plenty of time for question and answer at that point. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Gina.
Okay, are we on? All right. Okay, so my name is Gina again, and I am an assistant instructor with T-Layer, which is Technical Large Animal Emergency Rescue. And it's a group of instructors who go around, basically around the country, and are able to help teach animal owners and first responders in the technical emergency rescue and preparedness for pretty much any animal. I'm an instructor for them. I'm also a firefighter at Loveland Fire Rescue. And tier team there on the bottom is called Technical Emergency Animal Rescue Team, based out of here in Larimer County. It's basically a team of veterinarians who we've put together, large animal veterinarians, ambulatory vets, put together to be able to respond to single incidents as well as disaster incidents, to basically perform as the paramedic for the animal. Myself, a little bit about me, I'm originally from Golden. I grew up on a little mini ranch. We had animals, we had chickens, and we raised our own cattle for feed, and then we had pack mules, pack donkeys, we had horses, and we had hunting dogs. I was very involved in 4-H growing up, so it's really an honor to be able to come back to the Extension office and be able to kind of pay it forward through them. I was very involved in FFA, rodeo, showing, pretty much did all that stuff growing up. I have some personal experience with fire. My house actually burned from an attic fire when I was about 14, so I do have some firsthand experience with my own disaster. I got my bachelor's here at CSU in animal science, and I've been a veterinary technician for 20 years, which over half of that was spent here at Colorado State University at the Veterinary Teaching Hospital. My main focus is in large animals. Again, as an instructor with TLAIR, I'm also an animal first aid instructor for Red Cross. I belong to the Colorado State Animal Response Team, Larimer County Medical Reserve Corps, and we go around and give preparedness talks to any kind of groups, community groups, kids groups. And then finally, I am a firefighter, and I do spend a lot of time training fire departments, veterinarians, and animal owners in safe animal handling and technical rescue. All right, so if you haven't already done so, I gotta do this. If you haven't already done so, you can pull up the little fire prevention checklist, and I'm going to go over this real quick. It's just some things to think about ahead of time. Know what you have in your facility. Is your house or is your barn, are they easily accessible? Do you have your aisleways and doorways clear of debris? Are your electric appliances completely sealed, or are they in a safe place? Do you have all your extension cords removed? Do you have electrical cords hanging from or supported by nails? Is your permanent electrical wiring in conduit? Do you have little cages over all of your light bulbs? Do you have a master electric power switch on the outside of your barn? Is there any kind of water source or water hydrant near the entrance of the barn with hose long enough to reach the opposite end? Do you have your hay or manure, any of your bedding stored at least 100 feet from your barn or at another facility? Are any of your cleaning cloths contaminated with any petroleum products, because they can self-ignite? So if you have your little pile of oil rags there, they can self-ignite. Or do you have a sign for the fire department close by your telephone? Do you have an emergency animal escape plan? Can your fire apparatus reach your barn? And have you invited your fire department over to visit your barn? This is easily accessible by a website, which I'll give you later, but it's provided by Lori Loveman. And I believe this is something you need to look at periodically and make sure you update as you go through, even just once a year, once every 6 months. If you have new animals, new people coming in, you need to have that as a procedure. So this is a brief outline of the topics we're going to cover to fit today's time limit. So number one, what are your animals and facilities worth to you? Emotionally, we all know that answer. But how about financially? Emergency kits. Well, now that you've got this already, we're going to do emergency kits in a little while. You got it already, well, now what about plan B? Do you evacuate? Do you shelter in place? Pre-plan your animals. For some reason, they don't read these emergency plans. We need to practice with them. Barn safety. One of the first things I learned when I was camping growing up was that you have to be a master at making the perfect campfire. The perfect fire needs fuel, heat, and oxygen. We have our fuel. We have our heat. And look at all the oxygen. It's all over the place. Fuel needs, a fire needs all of these things, or if any of these things are taken away, it puts the fire out. The combustion of the fuel creates light and heat, which looks to us as fire. It's actually creating light and heat from the process called combustion. Heat moves by 3 different methods: convection, conduction, and radiation. If you put your hand on top of the fire, you will feel convection. That's when the heat rises and you feel it above you. Conduction is if I stuck a metal rod into the side of this fire, I would eventually feel it at the other end of the rod. That's conduction. Radiation is sitting here beside the fire and being able to feel the heat coming from the fire out to me. So what does this cool barn remind you of? Well, most barns have all the ingredients for a perfect fire. They have the dried, cured wood, the dust, the hay, the manure, those are the fuels. The oil-soaked rags, gas, heat lamps, electrical cords, coffee pots, all the heat sources. And check out the oxygen supply. So what does this all add up to? A perfect campfire. The combustibles lift and not converted into gas yet. This is called smoke. So the smoke is all the non-combustible material that hasn't lit on fire yet. It is superheated, poisonous material that when inhaled will probably damage your lungs beyond repair before it actually poisons you. Carbon monoxide, hydrogen cyanide, and think of all the numerous other fuels in your barn. When their chemical composition is disrupted, what is being released is smoke. The darker the smoke, the dirtier the fire. So in our barns, in residential and commercial construction, there are strict building codes and fire codes to abide by due to this life safety factor. In residential and commercial construction, we have fire doors, drywall, conduit, insulation. These all assist in containing fire to one area. In barns, you may find that a building permit is never even pulled. Internal structures, electrical, are not even protected, and there's no separations between life and hazardous materials. And some of our fire hazards include cobwebs and dust, which are very flammable, electrical wiring that is not contained inside conduit, and note that the plastic around some of the electrical wiring is very apt to be eaten by rodents, or for some reason birds like to put their nests in there. I don't really know why, but they love to put their nests there. Electrical appliances like coffee pots, don't know why we have to have coffee pots in barns, but we tend to do that. Straw, manure, hay, oil-soaked cloths, all sitting around. The door construction, what kind of doors do you have in your barn? Are they easily opened from the outside? Outside access, if we have this animal here who needs to be able to get out and we say the fire's down at this end of the barn, instead of having to take him through that hallway, maybe he needs to have an access behind his stall out the back. Ventilation and roof construction and gusset plates are a whole nother ball of wax, which we'll get to here. Wood trusses are a commonplace in barn construction and are great for the purpose that they serve. It's the gusset plates you should be concerned about. These are gusset plates. They are a thin metal, almost staple-like. And to save time and be more economical for mass production, gusset plates are used in place of screws and nails. Well, remember convection with the heat rising? The heat rises and stretches these metal plates, which become completely incapable of holding the metal or the wood together. They come loose, and then all of these pieces of wood are just free to fall. Then the roof fails. You see in a lot of these barn fires where you see pictures the next day and the roof is completely caved in. This is usually the source. These gusset plates fail because of the heat and the entire roof collapses. So I want you to take a look at this picture. Your favorite, most expensive friend is in here. Oops, I'm not. Are you going to go in? Is there a reason the firefighter's outside? Absolutely. Remember the campfire smoke? From this black smoke, what's burning in there? This fire is almost at flashover. A flashover is when every single thing inside the building is on fire, including the smoke. Well, as you can see, this smoke is starting to ignite. So this barn fire is actually almost at full flashover. Temperatures in smoke by itself can reach anywhere from 400 to 900 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures in a flashover, 1,000 to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Our fire gear is rated to take a flashover for maybe 15 seconds before our skin starts to burn. Now think about that. Is there anything alive inside this barn? Even if the fire is only burning for 2 minutes. And remember the roof? It's probably going to collapse momentarily because as convection rises, if all of this smoke is already banked down to here, think about how much heat is up here. So aside from the fire, the roof collapsing on top of you is probably a bad day as well. So we go to the 911 call. Most animals scream, a lot. Even in our simulations with trained animals, they yell for each other. We use stage smoke in our simulations, the white fog. Well, when a fully geared firefighter went in to halter an animal, he tried to find the stall door, find a halter, getting the door open, and now he has to catch the animal, sounding like Darth Vader. Right. It took a firefighter almost 2 minutes to get one horse. And now multiply that with black smoke and not being able to see at all, not even your hand in front of you. And even with that stage smoke, we could barely see our hands in front of us. I honestly, being an animal owner, wouldn't try to catch my horse blindfolded in daylight when she could see me. Now think about that. They can't see you either, and you've walked into this barn and you're touching this animal who doesn't know who you are because she can't see you either, and trying to catch that animal. Now I'm going to be really honest with you. If the barn is silent, there's a chance that all of those animals have taken in enough and inhaled enough smoke that they're already dead. If there's no screaming happening and it's a silent barn, there's a pretty good chance that they're already dead. Most barns are fully involved in fire in 5 to 7 minutes. And the average response time for emergency vehicles can be 5 to 20 minutes depending on where you're at. So if I'm near town and I know that the fire response can be 5 minutes from the fire department from my house, think about if you lived out in the country. Now you've got at least you could have a 20-minute response time. This last one here about the irrational decisions, this last one's what's known as an epi-dump. Epinephrine floods your system in crisis. It's your fight or flight response. Your heart rate soars, the butterflies in your gut are your other systems actually shutting down so all of your blood and oxygen can rush to your muscles, and your sensibility gets turned off. What I call the parental epi-dump, this is what you hear when you hear about moms lifting cars up when their child is hurt. They'll do anything to save their kid. Don't let the epi-dump control you. Take a deep breath, not of the smoke, and focus your thoughts, and then react. Don't make the situation worse. Do not become a victim. Is the barn silent? Is the roof stable? Make sure you answer that. The best thing we can do is to prevent the fire from happening in the first place. Check your facility every day. Did somebody plug something in that shouldn't be plugged in? Are all the fans turned off and unplugged? Are all of the coffee pots turned off and unplugged? Are all the heat lamps turned off and unplugged? Making sure you go through and find out if there are any oil-soaked rags that have been dumped off to the side. You need to take those out and dispose of them properly. Invite your local fire department over. They are happy to come over and help you find any problems that are in your barn that you need to address. Especially having them come out and say, hey, if I had to get in here in the dark without being able to see, would I be able to even help you? And have them come over. Install a firewall or electrical box outside of your barn so you can turn the power off. If your barn roof is metal, vent it. Remember, heat rises, metal stretches, so being able to have it vented very well is a good idea. Install a sprinkler system. Smoke detectors, but the smoke detectors are kind of an iffy thing because you have to keep them clean. If there's dust in those smoke detectors, they'll actually go off inadvertently. Having a fire lane and outside pens. Animals get the epi-dump too, but their instinct tells them to go to their safe place or fight. If their safe place is inside the stall, because some of our animals don't leave the stall very often, if their safe place is inside the stall, you let them out, they're going to run back in. That's why you see animals running back into burning buildings, because that's their safe place. Having halters by the door and practicing your evacuation, all of these are absolutely key. Here's some helpful links, and I'll give you a chance to write some of these down, but you'll be able to go back and write these down too. Fire safety in barns, that's where this fire prevention checklist came from. There are statistics and dozens of resources. You could spend hours on this website. But there are some amazing statistics that are very unnerving about barn fires and what the cause was. Lori Loveman does a great job. She's collected statistics that are amazing over the last several years to look at those and find out. I've seen that most of the causes are actually from electrical fire. And there is an article out somewhere, and I can try to look that up if anybody's interested, but you can look up a fire that happened in Ohio, I believe just this year. It was a barn fire with 40 horses were inside, only 16 survived, I think. It was caused because they put a heat lamp on a newborn calf and left it there. And that's how many horses passed in that barn. Equisearch.com, it says prevent horse barn fires. This is appropriate for any kind of barn. It really is. Some firefighters really did some good work on putting that list together. There's what's called NFPA 150, which is the National Fire Protection Association rules, which all fire departments have to abide by. There are hundreds of these rules, but this is one that's specifically to fire and life safety for animal housing facilities, which I think is very important for animal owners to look at, because as it stands, you know, building a barn, sometimes you don't even need to have a building permit to build one. So it's never been inspected. To have those guidelines is pretty nice to have. And then there's our website, which is tlayer.org. If you ever want to get trained in technical animal rescue or have one of these rescue trainings, you can get on there and see some of their stories. There's some pretty interesting stories in there as well. Okay, so what about the bigger thing? Let's go beyond our little barn fire into wildland and disaster pre-planning. Do you have defensible space around your barn or pens? Mountain properties pose additional threats because wildfire is driven by uncontrollable factors. There's the weather, topography, fuel types. All those things can affect the defensible space around your house and your barns. Roofing construction, appropriate for your wildland fire risks in your area. That's very important to know. If a fire brand, which is the fire that comes off the top of a pine tree and lands on top of your roof, will it catch your roof on fire? And so you need to know what roof constructions are appropriate for your area. Are your driveways wide enough and strong enough to hold a fire engine? It does recommend in some of these websites to have your driveways be 12 feet wide. Well, a lot of places that's not even feasible, but an average fire engine can weigh anywhere from 75,000 pounds and up. And so that's 75,000 pounds. If you have the cute little bridge on your property, the fire engine may not even be able to get to your house. The 12 feet wide, I can totally relate to, because if you have a boarding facility, which does kind of concern me, seeing some of the boarding facilities that are around, the lane or the access into the boarding facility is pretty thin or pretty narrow. And if you've gone and you have all these clients who you've called and said, hey, by the way, our barn is on fire, so now you have 20 people on their way over to try and save their animal, and the fire engine needs to get into that area as well. So you need to have those appropriate pre-plans built in. And I would suggest highly having your fire department out to help you decide if your driveway is long enough or wide enough for an engine to get there. Are your driveways clear of vegetation? If you're in a mountain property and you have all this wonderful defensible space around your property or around your house, and then you have a 2-lane track with weeds that are 5 feet high, grass that's 5 feet high on either side of your driveway, and that catches on fire, you've just created your own escape issues with that. So making sure that you can be able to escape if you need to. Knowing the water sources close to your house and the risks of flooding. Making sure you know if there is a water source or is there a hydrant close by. Defensible space is really well described and defined in these resources, and I highly suggest getting on these. Firewise.org is an amazing website. You can spend, like I say, a couple hours on there looking at things. There's all kinds of different resources, and the Colorado State Forest Service has provided a pretty good guideline on what defensible space is and what you need to do to protect your house. They say 30 feet here in this picture, but in your area it might be different. The reason for this is if any of these trees topple over being on fire, they will land right on your house. So that's why they suggest the distance. Other disaster concerns. Well, there's lots of stuff for Colorado for sure. Snowstorms are fairly predictable. Be prepared to be snowed in or out for at least 4 to 5 days. I actually, 72 hours is a standard, but I like to lean on the longer side, especially if you have livestock herds. If you have livestock herds, they could be exposed for longer periods if there's a week-long cold snap and the snow doesn't melt for a week. You're going to need to be able to have the animals prepared for quite some time. And if you have a livestock herd, you well know those risks of having it longer than be just 72 hours. Tornadoes are not so predictable, although I can't even imagine trying to evacuate these little chickens. That would be a nightmare. But they're not so predictable. But if you live in these areas, chances are you are the best resource for what works best and what doesn't, as far as preparedness goes. And so with tornadoes, if you're going to be displaced from your property, that would be the best preparedness that I could give you, is that if you're going to be displaced and you need to go somewhere else while your property has been destroyed, having a plan on where you're going to go is a good idea, especially if you have quite a few animals. Are you going to go to a family's property that's some distance away? Making sure they know you're coming would be a good idea. Making sure you have preparedness plans for that kind of a disaster is pretty important. Flash flooding gives us a little bit of time, but it's not enough to pack the photo albums. So get yourself safe and have a practice plan for your animals, and know what you're going to be doing with your animals and if a flash flood were to occur. So ideas of what to put in your emergency kits is outlined in numerous resources, and I have these 3 resources that are great here on the bottom. For companion animals, dogs and cats specifically, the prepackaged kits that you can buy online are amazing. They're great, and they're way cheaper than trying to build one yourself. When you build one yourself, it does end up being a little more expensive. It just depends on your animal. If he has specific medical needs, dietary needs, then obviously you're going to make your own kit. For all other animals, you will be better off building your own kit because you know what your animal needs. So now, what if you can't go home? Now, the reason I put these websites on here is that we did try to have these downloaded and ready for you, these emergency kit lists. It just gives you suggestions on what to put in there, some medical stuff, a first aid kit, food, haltering, cages for smaller animals, that kind of thing. Ready Colorado was working on their website last night, so I wasn't able to get that downloaded. So please feel free to go to those sites and pull up an emergency kit list for yourself. So now the bigger question is, now what if you can't go home? What if you're at work and your house is up in the canyon and now you've been told that you need to evacuate? Well, I can tell you right now, do not self-deploy. And I can tell you that any other emergency agency, fire, police, everyone is going to tell you, do not self-deploy. If you've been told by the authorities that you're allowed to go home, then do so. But if you are told that it's been closed down, the canyon's been closed down, you're not going to be allowed in. So just know that. Traffic impedes emergency vehicles. It just makes it a complete chaos if there's 20 people trying to go up the canyon to try and save other people's animals, and then you've created a bottleneck and now the emergency vehicles can't get up there. So don't self-deploy unless you've specifically been told to. If your animal is evacuated to a shelter, you need to have identification tags, microchip your animals, tattoo your animals, ear tags. Pictures is a big thing too, especially if it's just a small farm and you have, your pet, this cute little alpaca here, and if I have a picture taken with my animal and have it with the equipment that's at his facility, then if I as a firefighter need to evacuate your animal, I'll take all that stuff with me to the shelter, and now the shelter has identification markings with a picture of you and a picture of your animal, and they can identify and get you back together again a lot faster. Having the medical information, including medications for your animals close by with your animal in case your animal does get evacuated. We don't have, let's go down in a minute here. If your animal is sheltered in place, firefighters can actually help. If your animal is sheltered in place, have some information there about your animal so that I know, especially if they have aggressive behavior, so we don't just walk in and your animal happens to, hate yellow fire uniforms. That might be a good thing for us to know. Specific habits, like say if we needed to evacuate your cats, and you have, okay, my cat, Smokey, always hides underneath this specific bed. Well, then I can go straight to that bed and find him. And having habits to know where to find these animals and how to successfully evacuate them is important. But if you're going to leave them there, having enough feed and water for your animals is very important. The water on the emergency vehicles is non-potable. So, and most of the water sources, especially up in the canyons, gets turned off when there's a wildfire. And so, like some of these animals we went up and found, and there wasn't enough water for these animals to be able to last them for 3 days, and then we had to be able to try and get water up there to them, and this is the middle of the summer. So when you leave your animals for the day, you need to make sure that they have plenty of water there in case you happen to be evacuated and weren't allowed to go back in. So are you going to shelter in place, or are you going to set your animal free? There are a lot of arguments both ways. My question to you, have your animals ever been outside of their protected, safe home? Has your little show steer ever been in the woods? Are you going to let him out into the woods into a wildfire? That would be my biggest question to you, especially as an animal owner. My personal experience is specifically with this horse in this picture, and that's a firefighter standing next to him, next to her. We were assigned, our crew was assigned to this area last year, and we were assigned to these few houses to protect them from future fire, and you can tell the fire's already gone through this area, and everything behind her is burned. And we found the barn. There wasn't a horse in it, and I noticed that and thinking, okay, there's no trailer here, maybe they took their horse with them. And we didn't hear whinnying all night, so I didn't concern myself. But the next morning, there she was standing at the fence, and she was completely disoriented. She had black marks on her face from hitting trees all night, completely disoriented. Maybe she'd been breathing smoke all night, so that can make you disoriented. Plus the fact that animals recognize where they are by landmarks. Well, if you look behind her, all of her landmarks are gone. And so now she's completely confused. She had no idea where her barn was. We finally caught her and took her back to her barn. And her barn had great defensible space around it. So she was probably safer in staying at that barn than she was just being set free. Come to find out, this horse had lived on this property for over 20 years. And so she knew this property very, very well. And here she knew the property, and she still was disoriented and couldn't find her barn. As a technician, that's highly concerning to me because, she breathes smoke all night, so who knows? Are they safer where they are? And as firefighters, we can go through and be able to help feed them and take care of them, and we can report back to the incident commander, the animals are safe, what animals are safe at which addresses, and we get that information back to the owners so that the owners don't have to worry. In an evacuation, know the best route out of your area. The shelter locations, a lot of them don't have co-sheltering with humans and animals, and a lot of that's due to the fact that there's a lot of people that are actually allergic to animals, so they don't usually have co-sheltering. But knowing where you're going to take your animals, especially large animals, they'll let you know where the shelter location is going to be, and you should be able to find that out. The PIO is what's called a Public Information Officer. They are assigned by the emergency services when the incident occurs. The Public Information Officer is usually like a chief of fire, chief of police, some kind of sheriff's department guy, who will then relay information to the public about what's happening at the fire. If you need to know anything about your property, the Public Information Officer is the person to ask, because no other firefighter is going to answer any questions. They don't have time to, and they're not supposed to. The Incident Command is the person in charge of all of the emergency services that are up there, and that's kind of how things run on that end. There's always a chance of jammed phone lines, so you need to remain calm. It obviously helps your blood pressure, but it also helps the animals calm down too, because a lot of times they'll panic if we're panicking. So practicing evacuating. Usually you have about 30 minutes or so to evacuate when you're notified, unless of course it's a tornado, then you probably need to go by how fast the tornado is coming. This is not the time to practice loading on a trailer. And this is not the time, if I have to evacuate your animal, this is not the time for me to train your animal to get on the trailer. So what is your neighbor's plan? I've actually talked to somebody she had 4 horses or so, and I said, so what's your evacuation plan? And she said, I'm going to use my neighbor's trailer. And I thought, well, do you ever think that maybe your neighbor's going to use his trailer for his horses? So have an evacuation plan. Know what's happening. Know how to hook up your trailer in an emergency situation. Make sure it's hooked up properly. Have your tires full on your trailer. They don't have grass growing up around them. Have your emergency kits. If you have a 4-horse trailer and you have 4 horses, remind yourself that you need to be able to store hay on your rig too. So knowing where you're going to put that much hay. Do a practice evacuation and know exactly where you're going to put everything. It's funny when you hear people say, oh yeah, I have this 4-horse trailer and I put all the hay in the front. Well, how are you going to get the 4 horses in then? So know how you're going to get that done. Don't spend time trying to load all of your hay and feed. Load 2 to 3 days worth and then know where your feed stores are, especially when it comes to large animals, because they eat a lot more than dogs and cats. So what about the animal? Understanding that situational awareness is very keen to an animal, and especially their senses. And when an emergency situation happens, they go straight into fight or flight mode. Obviously, they get the epidump way worse than we do because they are prey animals. They get the epidump, and the first thing they think of is, I need to get out, I need to go to the safe place. And even the most tame, loving animal can see you as a predator. The owners who say their animal will never kick, those are the animals that kick. So knowing that, don't ever tell a first responder that your horse doesn't kick. Knowing the difference between prey and predator. Prey animals have their eyes on the sides of their heads, because they can see 360 degrees around them to make sure that the mountain lion behind them is not getting any closer. Predators have our eyes, and I include us on this because we eat meat. Predators have our eyes on the front of our heads. That's so we can focus in on what we're chasing. So in a fight or flight situation, we can be seen as predators, and we need to remember that. Understanding herd behavior. is very, very important, especially those of us who've owned herds. You know who your alpha animal is. Don't use blindfolds, whips, or nose chains. Blindfolds take up time to put on. It's not going to do you any good if it's already dark or smoky because they can't see anyway. And sometimes it'll make it worse. Sometimes it makes situations worse. Don't use a whip or a nose chain because now it's officially become a predator. And you're not going to make anything any calmer by doing that. If you are under stress, how does your animal react? A lot of animals will get stressed just because you are, and they can smell it on you. Horses don't have handles. Do not try to haul an animal by their neck. We don't save people by their necks. I don't expect anybody to save their animal by their neck or their tail. And in that regard, too, when you're loading your animals on trailers, having your horse walk alongside your truck is not considered appropriate, and it's also illegal. So just so you know that, I have seen actual pictures of people walking their animals next to cars in an evacuation, and that's definitely illegal and not appropriate. So considerations with herds. Practice evacuations with the alpha animal. The rest will usually follow. So you take this, let's pretend like this small guy is the alpha. Halter one animal. Don't take the time to halter the rest of them. Halter one animal and the rest will all follow. This guy makes me laugh. I think all of us will agree that he's assumed the predatory stance, and he's really going to move fast in those flip-flops. And these guys are downhill, and they're thinking, I mean, what are these guys thinking? Look at these guys. And this guy back here is not even paying attention. So this is a completely unsafe situation, but know that you will look like the predator in a crisis situation, whether you like it or not. Remember, when you have plan A and B in line, your animals are all on plan X. So what about babies and mamas? This is a whole different situation. Remember the parental epi-dump that I talked about? Well, when a mom is haltered and she's taken to the trailer, what is the baby doing? Usually running around in frantic circles and then on the other side of the trailer. And that's when the mom goes into complete mommy epi-dump mode to save her baby. And she loses all sensibility. So when you have mamas and babies, the best thing to do is have the babies halter broken. There's no excuse for this thing to not be halter broken. When you have the babies led and have them haltered, mommies will stay right there on their tail. So leading the babies first will always make life a lot simpler. So I'm not sure on the evacuation plan for this guy, but I'm thinking that it is appropriate for what this camel seems pretty happy with that. Not sure. And then I think this is pretty classic. This is a great evacuation plan. Maybe, don't know. Not sure what's in the trunk. We put the kids in the trunk. That's where they are. Because life safety is our job, animals will self-rescue if they can. Humans, because of our parental and economical connection with our animals, we tend to go into the parental epi-dump mode when our animal is in danger. And therefore, we put ourselves in danger as well. This actually happened last year in Loveland, where a woman was walking alongside of an irrigation ditch and her dog jumped in, and she jumped in after it to save it. And what happened? Well, the dog floated, and the dog was able to get out, and the woman did not, because humans tend to just sink to the bottom. And here we are with next to the sign that says, certain death if entered. We don't take the time to read the signs. We don't take the time to look around us and see what the dangers are. We go into straight parental epi-dump and react. Animals react and then think. We need to be a little more like what we need to be and think before we react, because a lot of times we react upon the parental epi-dump and do something that makes us completely unsafe. Education and prevention is the key. I'm honored to be able to pay this forward, pay all this information forward to my fellow animal owners and to my fellow first responders, because this is something that we can all be a part of, and we can all help each other prevent these things from happening, or at least be prepared for these things to happen, especially when it comes to natural disasters. Be safe, and thank you so much, and we can end it on that.
Okay, thank you so much, Gina. I guess we'll open it up for questions. Actually, before we open it up for questions, Darren, do you want to pull up the survey questions? So now that you've heard Gina's wonderful presentation, hopefully you're able to be much more prepared for an emergency. So if you can go ahead and answer these 2 questions for us. Please rate your knowledge now after the presentation, which hopefully it's much more. And then secondly, do you plan on developing an emergency plan for you and your animals or livestock now that you know what you know? So while you're answering that, you can also begin to ask any questions to Gina or myself via the chat box. So we'll just hang on and wait for some questions. I guess while we're waiting for some questions, I happened to think of a question while I was listening to Gina speak. So you mentioned about getting emergency kits ready and maybe some photos and medical supplies and that kind of thing. And particularly for maybe cats and dogs in a house, where would a firefighter or a first responder look for something like that?
Usually right near an entry door. So either right by your back door, right by the front door. I've actually had specific personal experience with going into a house and all of a sudden I see big dog bowls. Well, then I'll start looking for a dog. We're pretty, we notice things like that when we've gone into one house where there was a whole bunch of cats. And we're there to actually protect the houses, so I'm not there to randomly look through people's house. But, I saw some cats, so I made sure that they had their food out and I had their water for them, and then we make sure that they stay there and stay safe. But yeah, near one of the entry or exit doors is a pretty good place to put that. And with that, if there's, if you have your own house fire and you're needing to escape, having leashes or cages near both entrances and exits are pretty important, because what if the fire's at the front of your house and you need to exit out the back? Make sure that you have leashes there at the back door for your dogs.
Okay, great. Looks like Carol has a question. Is there a list of active county animal rescue teams?
Definitely look on those websites. I believe it's cosart.org or it's the cvmf.org. You can get on those websites and be able to find your active county animal rescue teams. And most definitely, the more volunteers and active members we get involved, the better. You can actually be part of, like here we have a Larimer County Horsemen's Association where, some people have trailers that they can offer for assistance in evacuating those people that maybe don't have trailers. And so maybe making sure you get on and be involved as much as possible. You can get involved on any of those sites. CVMF and then cosart.org, I think, but it's on the presentation there. I have here a question from one of our little audience members here. If you don't have a chip, how else can you place an ID on your animal? You can spray paint it on or spray paint the phone number on if you have time. If you don't have time for that, there are some where you can put like a strap around their fetlock, put that on. If you have to have your horse loose, it's scary to leave the halters on, because if they're loose out into the woods, if they get their halter caught on a tree or something, they're done. So a lot of people say maybe don't put the collars around the horses or a cattle neck, because then if they go and they're running and they've got something around their neck, and if they get trapped on a tree, that's a bad thing. Spray painting works fine. Also, you can use, there are some livestock pens. They're like almost like a clay pen. Livestock owners use them all the time to or to label their animals. You can also put something around, like I say, around their fetlock. That works pretty good. If you're going to spray paint or write in a Sharpie, you can write in a Sharpie on their hoof wall. You can write in a Sharpie up on their neck underneath like a mane area, so it'll keep it safe so it won't get washed off by rain or anything. Something that's going to be waterproof. And then let's see, there's another question. Describe how an animal that might have hypothermia from cold flood to help an animal. Hypothermia, I actually did have a hypothermia course at one point, is to get them dry and get them to a place where they're not going to have any other wind or air issues. So that if they're inside of a barn, you don't necessarily have to put a heat lamp on them, because you could overheat one specific area. And if you heat it one specific area on an animal, you can burn their skin and actually create more of a problem. So putting a heat lamp on them, I would not recommend. Getting them dry and getting them into an arid, dry area where they're not going to have any more wind on them to make them colder is a very good idea. So, and then getting lots of fluids into them, getting some water, and again, really just getting them dry is the most important thing.
Okay, do we have any more questions? While you're thinking about questions, just wanted to remind everyone that this webinar is recorded and it will be made available on the Small Acreage Management website, the Colorado State University Extension Small Acreage Management website, and I will send you all the link so you can find it easily. And so we'll wait for a few more minutes if there's any questions. Looks like Carol is typing.
And I wanted to also mention that in this presentation at the very end, there is my email address as well, and you're welcome to contact me with any further questions. My advice, especially on the medical aspects, if there's something medically concerning with your animal, is that you need to speak with a veterinarian about it. I get asked a lot of questions about, how should I do this or how should I do that, and I want to make sure that the veterinarian has the last word, and they really should be contacted if you have any concerns at all.
While we're waiting for some more questions, I just wanted to kind of advertise we're having a livestock for small acreage workshop on October 15th at the Boulder County Fairgrounds. So if any of you are locals, hopefully you can make it to that event. And I'll also send you the flyer for that event too. We'll have information on all different kind of large animals, although we're not going to be talking about horses. We'll be talking about all the other types of livestock you could have, big and small, on a small acreage. All right. Looks like Carol is working with her local kennel club who wants to team up with an animal rescue. She served on a managed emergency situation and need to advise them on, as to teaming up to help each other. Okay.
I know that, I know that with technical rescue and the rescue of the local rescue teams, making sure that you get the proper training. We will be probably be having T-layer training out here at some point over the next year or so, and so I'm happy to get that information to you. If you're interested in being part of those trainings, by all means email me, and I will make sure you get that information when it becomes available. Because most definitely you don't want to go out on a technical animal rescue unless you are trained. A lot of times you will be turned away from the rescue scene if it's say it's a cow in a ditch. Not everybody is allowed to come by and just stop and help. A lot of times you will be turned away because not only is it a very dangerous situation, but the whole situation in itself for even the firefighters is dangerous. And so unless you have the proper training, making sure you get that done. So email me for sure, and I can get any trainings out to you I can find. And also going on the T-Layer website, you can even apply to go onto one of those trainings. They have them nationwide. They're really based out of the East Coast, and so we're trying our best to be able to get a training available that's out here for this area.
And Keith had a question. He's asking to describe what exactly an escape practice drill would be. Would it look like?
Well, I would suggest, I guess this is what I would have in my head, is if I had a barn and say I have 6 stalls, 3 on each side. Doesn't matter what kind of animals you have. So I have, sorry, did I just say 6 on each side? 3 on each side, 3 stalls on each side of the barn, and I have one long alleyway or fire lane, so to speak. Say I don't even have outside gates. They're all inside access, is to have all my animals in their stalls, open up all the stall doors, and chase them all out. Having an outside pen available and ready for them to be able to go to, having them train them into knowing where they need to go so that they're safe. And do it often. Have it be a fun drill for them so it doesn't seem like it's a panic drill when you do it, when you open up all the stall doors and chase them all into another area. I wouldn't take the time to train in going in, haltering the animals, each animal, because like I said, it just takes up too much time. If you can, I would definitely have the outside access, as I mentioned, so that there's access to the outsides of those stalls where you can chase the horses out and then close the doors. Or even from the outside of the barn, so you're outside of the barn, open up all the doors, get all the animals out, close all the doors, now they're safe. And the deal with that, though, is once you've opened those doors, what have you just done to the fire? You've just allowed a whole bunch more oxygen in. So you need to know that if you're going to open up your barn, close it back up again, and making sure that those animals stay outside. And once they're outside and the door is closed, now you can move them on to a different, safer area or an outside pen. But those kind of trainings, I mean, that's how I would maybe picture if I needed to do that, is to have some sort of an evacuation, play day with your animals. I mean, and they love that kind of stuff anyway. And so opening up all the gates, making sure they all know when you're screaming at them to get out, what they need to do, and treat it as a real life situation. That way, when they hear you screaming, they're not panicked by it. They're like, oh, well, this is the drill, got to run outside. And so they know that that's part of the deal. But I would recommend doing that all the time.
Good, that was a great example. Do we have any more questions? Marcia, is it possible to work with local sheriff departments to be allowed to go back to an area if it is safe to help others and their animals?
That's specifically why we have a Larimer County Horsemen's Association. Those guys are actually trained in fire situations. They're trained to be able to drive those trailers wherever they need to drive them to, and the sheriff's department already knows those people. And so as a private person, I can almost 99% guarantee that they're not going to let you back into that area. Regardless, you could be the president and they're still not going to let you back into the area because you do not have the training to be able to save yourself from a wildfire. Wildfires are a whole different ballgame, and especially in a disaster situation, those are a different ballgame. They are unpredictable. They can turn around and kill firefighters in a heartbeat. And so I can almost guarantee you're not going to be let back in that area. I would suggest you talk to the public information officer and find out, ask them when owners can be let back in. If you're wanting to go in and help other people evacuate, make sure you get with the program that's already maybe set in stone. Talk to the sheriff's department. They can train you in it. Be a resource for them. Once you're trained in that and you have your phone number in their list of resources, that is the most excellent way, because then they'll call you when you can go back in. And that's a great way to have that resource available, is to, if you don't have a horsemen's association in your area, is to be involved with the sheriff's department, because
once they know you and know you're trained and understand your qualifications and your ability, and they see your trailer and see you driving it, then they're more apt to call you in those situations.
And Gina, are there horsemen's associations pretty commonly in every county? I know we have listeners kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and I would call your sheriff's department and ask them. I think Larimer County has a really good setup. I mean, they have a search and rescue team, they have a dive team, we have horse association, we have livestock, so we have everything. But not every area is going to have the same thing, and not the same needs either. So my suggestion is to go talk to your county emergency planner, or talk to the emergency manager, talk to your sheriff's department, and find out what their needs are. Go around to other ranches in town and find out what are your neighbors' needs. What do you see as your biggest concerns for your area? Is it water access? Is it road access? Is it anything? Find out what the needs are, and then I would suggest going to your sheriff's department, because they are a great resource, and they're the ones who are going to make the phone calls as to who they need to come help.
All right. Well, it looks like it's about 1 o'clock. Maybe we'll hold on for a minute or two more if you have any more questions. Otherwise, if you have to log off, go ahead and do so. And I want to thank you all for listening in on Gina's presentation. And thank you, Gina, as well for presenting your information for all of us.
You're very welcome.
All right, everyone. It looks like we don't have any more questions, so we'll go ahead and call it a day. So thanks so much.